This is Vargas, still recording from the Vargas Vault. Just finished recording a shorter than what I usually do, DVD update. And I still have a couple of more minutes before my wife comes back from doing whatever she was doing with my kids, so I have free time to record a video. So I mentioned when I picked this up that I wanted to do a review on some board games that I picked up. And I really want to show off the Disney Villains one, but I wanted to start with the Dungeons and Dragons starter set and give a little bit of backstory on that. When I was collecting comic books, they would always show ads for this game called Dungeons and Dragons, and they would always have this really cool artwork. And playing video games and reading books, I was fascinated with the fantasy setting, and with that Dungeons and Dragons would show. So I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. But this is before the internet. This is before you could just Google something and you get the answer. So I didn't know what it was. I knew it was a game, but it wasn't a video game because I couldn't find any. Well, there were video games of Dungeons and Dragons, but not like the ones they would advertise on the comic books. So I was like, I don't know what that is. But watching movies and watching TV shows, I gathered that it was like at the time I thought it was like a board game, like Monopoly, that you would just pick your characters, roll some die, and move through squares and do that. It wasn't until later that I found it was much more intricate than that. That it involved creating your character. If you play video games, if you play video game RPGs, it's those video games are based on Dungeons and Dragons. So you create your character, you grind through dungeons, you get experience points, you level up, you learn new skills. But you don't do it in video game form. You do it with pen and paper, and you have to review your stats. Really interesting stuff. Also kind of overwhelming because it's super complicated. Or at least it sounds super complicated. Then my next contact with Dungeons and Dragons was through Spoonie, who was a really big YouTuber, and he went to work with Channel Awesome, and he would do video game reviews, movie reviews. But then he started doing this video series called Counter Monkey, which was in that series he would talk about his adventures in role-playing and different role-playings, not just Dungeons and Dragons. He would do Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder. He talked about a Call of Cthulhu game, which sounded super awesome, Cyberpunk, a whole bunch of these different role-playing games, and that really piqued my interest. I was like, wow, I really want to know more about this, and I want to play that. But here in Mexico, that was impossible because I didn't know anyone that played Dungeons and Dragons. I knew people that played video games. I knew people that played Yu-Gi-Oh! Was big at the time. Still kind of is, but not as big as it used to be. Very few people played Magic the Gathering, and no one that I knew played Dungeons and Dragons. I was like, God damn, I want to play Dungeons and Dragons. I want to know what that's about. And at the comic book store that I go to pick up my comic books, I would frequent the very small fantasy section that they had. And they had some Dungeons and Dragons stuff, but they were kind of pricey. The dice were pricey, the miniatures were pricey, the books were pricey. So I was like, well, I can't get into that. But I would still buy stuff, in the hopes that one day I would, get to play Dungeons and Dragons. And that's eventually how I came across this thing. I picked up this little treasure chest with the intention of putting stuff in. And through the years, I have picked up role-playing dice. This is a D20 dice because it rolls 20, and I picked up numerous dices here and there. This is a 10. This is a different one. They're all not in sets. I've bought these, loose. Whenever I see them, I buy them because I always say one day I'm gonna find a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons stuff, and I'm going to play Dungeons and Dragons. Damn it! Another die, and then these ones, which are your standard 6-sided die. And then I found these guys, which are like swords for something, but they're really cool. There's 4 of these. Got your blue one, got a green one, got a yellow one, and then got a red one. So through the years, I've picked up a whole bunch of different colored dies. This one is a 100 one. And I'm always saying, one of these days, I'm going to go full-blown geek, and I'm going to use these suckers, and I'm going to play Dungeons and Dragons. And then I bought this thing, which is even bigger chest, because, you know, chests are cool, and I like this one. I don't remember if I showed this one when I picked it up. I probably did. It's a wooden pirate chest with a skull here, and has 2 gemstones. You open it up like so, and boom, treasure. And I have picked up some coins here and there. I still need to get some gems, but booty, lots of booty. Actually, Macabro showed this. He showed it in one of his videos where he showed that Zombie Wasito's got a chest operation, and she had the chest on her chest because it's a chest. See, get it? Have funny. So I've been buying knickknacks here and there in the hopes that one day I would actually be able to play Dungeons and Dragons. And recently, finally, I found the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition starter set, along with a CD, which now I can't find because of course I wouldn't. Here we go. This one first, and then this one, and I'm super excited to have found this thing. Because again, I go when I used to go to the flea markets, I would go hoping that I would find anything Dungeons and Dragons related, or Pathfinder, or anything like that, and I never did. I never found anything. I found board games, but not this, because apparently it's super hard to find. And researching online, 'cause that's what I do whenever I'm interested in something and I get something that's my gateway to it. I research. I like to research and research and research and research. And I have discovered that Dungeons and Dragons is expensive. The miniatures are expensive. The dice are expensive. Way more expensive than the last time I wanted to get into it. The books are expensive, and because you have to buy a lot of stuff. You have to buy a player's handbook, which has all the rules and has all the character classes for the races and the alignments. I know basic stuff, not thanks to Spoonie, but nothing like too deep. I do feel like I need that. But then you have a Dungeon Master's Guide, and then you have the Monster Encyclopedia. And those books are like 30, 40 bucks. Oh, ooh, yeah. But this is what I bought. This is the Dungeons and Dragons starter set. This is an adventure module that will allow you to start off with Dungeons and Dragons. So, first thing that came when I opened this thing was a set of die. An actual set of die, not the random stuff that I've picked up. It has a nice metallic blue cover, which they're beautiful. I like these a lot. And you have your 6-sided die. You have a 12, a triangle one, 20, 10, and no, this is not 10. This is an 8 and a 10. So lots of different die to use, and you need to use them for different things. But you need more if you want to play with a group of people. So the next thing this thing has is the character adventure module. So it has it's called The Lost Mine of Phandelver. And it's an adventure that will get you started. It tells you how to get started. This is for the DM, because the DM is the Dungeon Master. He's the administrator of the adventure. I don't know when this thing got bent, but it got bent. But it seems to have been bent for a while. So, he's the one that tells the story. He's like, you walk through a path and you see a couple of goblins and they're carrying something. What do? Do you attack them or do you, ignore them? and then it's up to the players to decide. Well, we'll go attack them, and then they have to roll initiative and stuff like that. But this one has, how to run the adventure, the background on the Lost Mine of Fandelver, so that you can tell the story. The adventure hook, what the end game will be for this, and all the different things. And it has the monsters, the magic items, and the adventure modules, and a couple of maps. And the thing I like even though it's flimsy, I like hardcover books. The art is pretty cool, and it's in color, which is even more awesome. You have your monsters. That one looks cool. And then you have a green dragon. And I like the artwork. I love the artwork in fantasy. So yeah, this is pretty cool. And it has the stats for all the different monsters. And that would be more detailed in the Monster Encyclopedia, which I would love to get. Then you have your starter set rule book. And this one has how to get started, the 6 abilities, the order of combat, how to move and position, actions in combat, make an attack, cover, healing, how to travel, how to rest, how to get rewards, equipment, how to cast spells, and so on and so on. And this will be also more detailed in the official player's handbook, but this will, again, the purpose of this is to get you started. It will run through your adventure, and then you'll just get hooked. And if you want more adventure modules and more information, then you have to get the stuff. But for what it is, it looks pretty cool. A lot of things to keep track of, I'm not gonna lie. It'll probably be really hard to find people that will be interested in playing this with me. But there's options for that. And then the last thing that this thing has, and I actually printed some myself, because this one has 5 character sheets. So you can choose between being a wizard with chaotic good, a rogue who's neutral, a cleric who's neutral good, missing a page, a fighter that's lawful neutral, and if I can find the page I'm missing, there it is. You can be a fighter that's lawful good. So yeah, it has everything's already pre-filled. Tells you what you're going to get once you level up, and has a little backstory on what you are as a human, your class of fighter, and your background, your personal goal, and your alignment, and a description of the alignment. So that was pretty cool. But one of the things that Spoonie mentioned that's the best when playing Dungeons and Dragons or role-playing game is to actually role-play. Actually create your character, which is something that I like in the video game forms. So what I did is that I went online and I printed out these blank character sheets. So I thought that I could just do it, but I need the player's handbook because there are some rules. But basically what you would do, from the gist that I've gotten online, is that, for example, you have to get your strength. So your strength is determined by the roll of the dice. So you roll the die, and the equal amount of things that you rolled would be your starting point. And so you could, if you're lucky with the dice, you could get a good character that has a lot of strength, a lot of dexterity, and there's also points that you have to distribute. So you can't just full blown make if you're really lucky, you can't roll the dice and make an unstoppable guy from level 1. There are certain things to balance it, and if you get really crappy with the dice, you could get a really crappy character right off the bat. But this is what more interesting to me, to actually create a character and let the dice determine what his stats will be, as opposed to something that's already prefabricated. So you have your strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, for the saving throws. Then you have your acrobatics, animal handling, arcana, athletics, deception, history, insight, intimidation, investigation, medicine, nature, perception, performance, persuasion, religion, sleight of hand, stealth, and survival. Plus your armor class, your initiative, speed, personality traits, ideals, bonds, flaws, attacks and spellcasting equipment. And then on the back you can have, your character appearance. You can draw what your character is going to look like. You can create your own character's backstory. You can create a faction rank, some features and traits. Maybe he has a scar. Maybe, he has different color eyes. Whatever you want to do. Your age, your height, your weight, your eyes, your skin, your hair. This is more what I think of when I think of role-playing games. That you create your character, you create your backstory, and then you play with the character through the campaign. So that's why I printed these blank pages. I printed 5 blank pages so that I can create a character. But my intention was to create a character, and then I came across the stump of, for me to create a character, I need to know the rules, because there are some things that are not here. So I do need at least the player's handbook so I can, know how to properly roll a character. But yeah, again, this is the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. There's a lot of different editions, 5 editions at least. But with each edition, they've kind of it's a reboot. They just reset everything. So if you want to play it, you have to play 5th edition. But it's the newest edition. They've just added more modules and more adventures as the game has gone on. But if you want to start, yeah, you probably would start with this. If you just want an adventure, if you just want to play Dungeons & Dragons real quick, this would be your best option. But if you want to go real hardcore, then yeah, you have to buy the player's handbook, the monster encyclopedia, the dungeon master's guide. And if you really want to get deep into it, you have to buy more dice, and you have to buy you could buy miniatures, or you can make your own. There's a whole bunch of options, and it really depends on how deep you want to go into this. But I'm excited. I do wish I could find people to play this. Maybe I'll convince my wife, because I have this nephew that, because of Big Bang Theory and other stuff, he's interested in playing Dungeons & Dragons, but he's in the same boat I am, that we don't know jack shit about Dungeons & Dragons, and we don't know anyone that plays Dungeons & Dragons, so... And a lot of famous people play Dungeons & Dragons. I was actually researching that, and the guy that played Deathstroke in Justice League, some guy that has an Italian name, he's married to Sofia Vergara. He's a really hardcore Dungeons & Dragons player. I was researching, and I came across a video of him talking about how he has in his basement, his wife wanted a wine cellar, and he was like, nuts to that. I'm gonna make a dungeon room, and he built his own Dungeons and Dragons dungeon, and it's amazing, and it's really cool. So, I don't make super Hollywood actor money, so I'm not gonna be able to do that. But I found some printable things. I'll go really low budget. You can print out maps and miniatures, and then just print them and use that. That's what I'm gonna use. And I'm gonna have to start saving some money, because I would like to get the 3 books: the Monster Encyclopedia, the Player's Handbook, and the Dungeon Master Guide. Because I do really want to play Dungeons and Dragons. So yeah, I'll keep you posted on that. See if I can actually do it, or if this will be yet another thing that I chalk up to things that I wanted to play, and because of time and money, I can't. That sucks. Wish I had a bunch of money. Wish I had a lot of money to not work and have a lot of free time. But that is not my lot in life. But we'll see how this goes, because if nothing else, I'll have 3 really cool books with really cool artwork and really cool lore, which is awesome. So I'll keep you posted on that. But until I see you all again, this was Vargas talking about Dungeons and Dragons. If you see the Big Bang Theory, you probably have heard about Dungeons and Dragons, they talk about that a lot. And in a couple of episodes, they have actually played Dungeons and Dragons. They actually had a really cool one with that guy that I was mentioning, Will Shatner, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kevin Smith, and Josh Whedon were playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I thought it was a cool episode. And watch Spoonie. It's Spoonie Counter Monkey. That's when he talks about the adventures with Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm still finding channels, so if you know of someone that also dwells on that, let me know so I can get a better handle of this, because I do want to get a better handle of that. But till then, this is Vargas thanking you all, and see you later.